Officially, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the School of Community Health and Policy. Again, formally, my name is Kim Dobson-Sidnor, Dean of the school. Within the school, we have nursing, nutritional science, public health at the graduate level, health education at the undergraduate level, and I think we are still growing. And pre-professional physical therapy is part of our health education division. So just want to let you know a little bit about ourselves. I think we're about 20, public health is 20 years old actually this year within Morgan State, and we're expanding. Health Ed just joined us recently. But most importantly, I'm here today because I'm really excited that Dr. Barrett and her colleague, Dr. Deku, have put together this initiative to introduce you all to these various careers in health professions. And that's really critically important. Just finished doing a piece writing up how minorities are highly underrepresented in health careers broadly. And we only think about one or two occupations. So nursing always gets high. Professor Knight, thanks so much for being here. Nursing gets its easy, I know about nurses, I know about doctors. And then usually once you go past those two, it's like, well, what else is there in healthcare? So I'm so excited about the fact that Dr. Barrett and her colleague have put together this initiative to introduce all the opportunities that are available in healthcare and not have this kind of narrow vision. Also to take it outside of the medical setting. When you hear healthcare, people think, I don't want to work in a hospital. Well, the reality is most of health has nothing to do with hospitals. Actually, that's the last place you're going to wind up when all things go wrong for the most part. So what we want to do is make sure we have folks in all areas of health, that it's diverse, well represented, and that the best thinkers are in all the careers. Because no matter what the career is, we want our best minds, and we believe that by bringing in more of our, and I hate that word, underrepresented minorities, two terms I don't like. Just folks who currently aren't in the mix, to be in the mix so we can have a truly diverse by terms of race, ethnicity, geographic location, socio-economic background. When I say diversity, we mean that level of diversity. Not, can I get 2 colors of this? Can I get 2 colors of that? Can I get 1 of that? No, we want a highly diverse population, and I think this initiative will go a long way to doing that. So who's going to Jamaica? Wow, so that's really exciting. So I don't know how Dr. Barrett fixed it, because you can actually learn about healthcare right in the U.S. Somehow she's created this partnership where not only are you going to learn about healthcare professions, but you're going to go to Jamaica to do it. So that's a good move. And so I wish, I'm not going. She said I could go, and then she told me that we'd have to,
you got to pay your own way.
Pay my own way. I can't do that. But I am so happy for all you all are going. I look forward to you all when you come back, talking about what you did. But most importantly, kind of just spreading the word around what healthcare professions look like in your community, so that folks who right this minute, if you say, what's public health, go, they think clinics, they think all kinds of things, but that they really do understand this whole healthcare profession in its broadest context. Also want to personally thank, who are the panelists here for today? Could you all just identify yourselves? Thank you all. Today is Saturday, right? So students, look around and look at the people who are here on a Saturday to support you in developing your career. Nobody had to be here. Nobody's being paid, right? Any large amounts of money that I'm aware of. I know the school certainly did not. And the fact that they are here shows what level of investment and interest they have in you and in this whole healthcare professions piece. So personally, thank you on behalf of the school. Dr. Tucker, I see you over there. Some other folks in the hallway, you want to come on in?
Come on in for a second, yeah. You got volunteers?
We got volunteers. Let me thank I know you're going to thank the volunteers. Can you come in so I can personally thank the volunteers? All volunteers, raise your hand. Thank you, Ms. Meg in the back. These were DRPH.
It was a combination.
Combination
combo.
It does take a village, and luckily we have one. And I really want to thank you all from the school. So I know Dr. Barrett's going to thank you, but on behalf of the school, thank you, because it is the School of Community Health and Policy, and we put great emphasis on that term community, and we mean it. And you're all part of making this community real, so I appreciate you, and thank you. So with that, does anybody have any questions for me? I know we have guests from UMBC. Any other schools represented? it's UMBC and Morgan's in the house, so yay UMBC. I know Dr. Rabowski said you're good. Good people. So, and this is great. We'd love to see more schools, more collaboration across schools within the state, because you all are not going to be confined by the institution you came from. You're going to be working across schools, across the country, across the world. This is a global initiative. And the only way they do that, and you do that well, is if you get to meet everybody and everybody mixes together. So thank you. Hope you have a great day. Sorry I can't stay. It is the last day of my staycation. I celebrated my 39th wedding anniversary yesterday. And tomorrow's Father's Day, so I had to get him a gift yesterday, and I got to fix him dinner tomorrow. So I won't be staying around, but thank you all so much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
The nursing program, the doctoral nursing program, which is part of the School of Community Health. I guess we're just introducing ourselves first, right?
Okay. My name is Zedra Taylor, and I'm a student in the public health program here at Morgan State University.
Okay, my name is Harriet Knight, and as I stated earlier, I run the simulation lab here for nursing at Morgan State University. And although the simulation lab is primarily for nursing, we are flexible. We allow our PT students to come if they so desire. One of the other programs, I think is drama, whatever, they came over to use our simulation lab. So we're flexible in helping other departments here on campus. How I got into nursing, I started out as a biology major at Howard University, and after my first semester of being there, being away from Atlanta, first time away from home, I realized that wasn't for me. So, but I decided to go into nursing. I have been in nursing over 40 years, and I have enjoyed every day of it. It's an excellent opportunity for young students, old students, all ages. And right now, Morgan, we've done a turnaround in our nursing department. We had a 100% pass rate last year, and we had 16 students who graduated 3 weeks ago. And so far, of those 16 students, 7 have already taken their NCLEX exam and passed. Wow. We have an opportunity to help our students, work with our students. We are under the leadership of Dr. Signor and Dr. Maya Anderson. We've put a lot of systems in place to help our students to become successful in the nursing program. One of our students is back there today. So if you're interested in our nursing program, please stop by. We had an open house, and we had a lot of students that come that participated. So we're starting it's called like a summer camp, a boot camp for students that will be coming on board in September. And we want to do that. We started this program in order to help them be more successful, because nursing is not the easiest program in the world, but we are putting systems in place to try to help them to be successful. So that's why I'm having to cut my trip short to Ghana to come back, because our boot camp starts the second week of July. I also work with Dr. Raymond Terry on the global initiative, and Dr. Wooten and a bunch of us went to Cuba with him. However, that trip was sort of derailed for some political reasons, but it was a wonderful experience to be able to go to Cuba. And when I go to Ghana, I do missions work there. I'm also a parish nurse. So I will be working with 2 orphanages for the next 3.5 weeks while I'm in Ghana. So keep your ear open, because I will hopefully be able to get some of you guys to go with me in the spring. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Outstanding.
See, you got your fellowship.
Well, after that, my name is Dr. Christopher Poirier. I attended University of Maryland College Park. I graduated in 2011 with my undergrad there. Then I went to Shenandoah University School of Pharmacy, graduated in 2016. I've only been a pharmacist for 3 years now. I work for the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. Full-time, part-time I work at Walmart, just a retail pharmacy. There's so much to say. But I'd say the reason why I chose pharmacy, actually, I have 2 younger brothers. They had severe asthma when they were little, and they were always in the hospital. And so I always wondered, like, how does medicine heal people? So that's kind of why I got into pharmacy, to study drugs. I think that's about it.
I'm Reginald Barnes, Dr. Reginald Barnes. I went to medical school at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. My undergrad was Andrews University, a small school out in Berrien Springs, Michigan. I am an internist, diabetes specialist, and an ophthalmologist and ophthalmic surgeon. I'm on the staff at Howard University Hospital, professor of ophthalmology, where I teach residents on how to perform the basic ophthalmological procedures and surgeries. I'm also at the Washington Hospital Center, where I do the same. My passion is I hate blindness. I hate for anyone to lose their sight for any reason. My whole emphasis is on how to maintain that sight, regain that sight, and make certain that the person continues to see for the rest of their life. Period. Everything that I study is in that direction alone. That's where my focus is.
Well, I guess I didn't get into how I got into nursing. So I guess I had kind of a non-traditional path. Let's see, my father was a career Marine, and in those days, men didn't go into nursing. Nurses were just on television, searching for a husband or something like that, or whatever. That was my negative impression of nursing until I actually joined the Navy in 1979. And I always enjoyed health science classes and all that stuff, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. But once I got into the Navy as a hospital corpsman, I got exposed to men that were nurses. I mean, that officers that were nurses, they were really sharp, and they really mentored me, and that's how I kind of got the bug to be a nurse. But I also had some negative experience. I'll tell you about that as well, where unfortunately, and the prejudices out there, discriminations out there, where they think African American, okay, you just don't know nothing. I was like, wait a minute, I know this stuff. Wait a minute, I can do this. Let me just go ahead and finish this Navy career. Let me go. And I got out after 8 years, moved back home. My parents, they were anxious to have one of our 4 children graduate from college, so I was it. So you just don't have to work or nothing. Just come home, go to school. That's it. So I went to Coppin State College back then. Got my BSN in nursing, and started working at the University of Maryland as an operating room nurse. And I've enjoyed it ever since. Basically, I don't know, and then later on became a nurse manager. I guess, I don't know if anybody remembers the show MASH. I don't know if anybody shows me, because basically I'm hot lips Houlihan. Basically, that's basically the job. That's basically the job I did. Running the OR, making sure, keeping the doctors in check, keeping the nurses in check and all that stuff. But it's been a great career. If you love, I love helping people. I mean, I'm not the type person that can sit at the computer and work all day. I got to interact. And there's so many specialties that you go into nursing. You can do nursing anesthesia, med-surg nursing, pediatric nursing, become a nurse anesthetist. I mean, it's so many different careers, and definitely you'll always have a job. I mean, definitely, unless they find a cure for every illness, as a registered nurse, you should be working. So it's a great career, and I recommend it to anybody. I've been doing it since 1991. And like I said, I got my master's, and right now I'm in the doctoral program. Hopefully you'll be teaching once I finish my doctoral program, hopefully here, but we'll see. But it's a great career, and I recommend it to anybody.
Okay. Well, just to give a little bit more information about myself, so I started as a patient care technician. So basically, you just need a CNA license, and then they will train you to be a patient care technician, which is a great start to be a nurse. So my experience is in urogynecology, pain management, med-surg, and now I'm actually a floater, where I go to different units and help out when they are short. So basically that's about it. It's a great start if you want to go into nursing. You get experience with different floors. So I would say it's a start. Don't think of it as a long life career, but it gives you the experience that you need in order to be a great nurse. So that's one option to explore.
So can you all talk a little bit about if someone wants to go into some aspect of health or medical, like medical school, what kinds of courses should they be thinking about doing at this point? Okay, that's it.
One of the things that I think is so important is to allow the student yourself to be the one that makes the decision. And that person who is making that decision ultimately is yourself. You want to be that individual. You want to surround yourself with mentors that want to support your decisions. Sometimes mentors need to be changed. All of you here have backgrounds where you can become a medical doctor. I know personally medical doctors that are communication majors. I do. Also aviators, architects. You don't have to be a biology person or a chemistry person. I have two nurses. One of them is my mentor, who is a medical doctor. She's now dean of the University of Michigan. There are some basic classes, however, that all doctors need to do well in, and those are the sciences. There's about 4 or 5 classes that are necessary to do well in, to be able to be considered for a medical school. Those are biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, and some schools want a biochemistry class or embryology class. So whether you decide to study French or Spanish or anything, you want to do well in those particular classes. Now my aim here is to assist anyone who wants to become a medical doctor. And I have to thank, honestly, Michelle Etienne, who asked me to come here because she met me off to the side some years ago and told me that I need to open up my mouth and get folk involved to state the experiences that I've had to be able to go through this, and some of you understand what I'm talking about already, treacherous course to get to where that is to be due. So we have an underground organization called, and it doesn't exclude anybody, More Blacks in Medicine, where we mentor folk on what is necessary to get inside there. You'll be amazed at some of the things that some of my students have been told as to why they cannot exceed and move forward, and how many persons would have gotten in to medical school had they just had the right person in front of them to just say something. So that is what I am all about. Don't let the fact that a C or a B or something discourage you in regards to that. If you all have that in your mind, I can talk on this for 30, 40 minutes, so I'm going to stop there. But that is it. You make up your mind. I'm here to assist, and my team is ready to assist. There's about 30 doctors who are on this area who I can send you to, and if you don't like that one, you go to the other doctor to help to mentor you in regards to where you need to go. I've had some discouraging mentors myself. Yes, I have. Somebody told me I could not do it, blah, 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 and here I am with 3 degrees. Praise be to the Lord. So that's basically what it is.
Thank you. And so, I don't know if you brought cards or anything?
I brought a few cards.
Okay, so people might want that.
I mean, somebody said something like, you can't do this, you can't do that. That is what I'm here for. You all are valuable and you are needed irrespective of whether or not you want to decide to go. We need health care all the way through, back and forth. There's so many gaps and holes and things, and there will be care that you'll be able to administer better than those who are in there right now. You know what you've gone through. You know what your grandmother and mother had to go through, your cousin. You all know things about yourself and your community. You'll do way, way better doing their job once you get in there, whether it be public health, nursing, pharmacy, whatever it is. You all are needed.
And it's so important to find mentors. And you have mentors for different reasons. So you may have 2 or 3 different mentors in the course of your education.
Mentors, don't be afraid to switch to mentors. You know, that mentor might be going through some emotional problems themselves and going through a divorce. Their wife ran out on them. You don't know what. Now they're taking out that stress on you. And that's not your problem. You want to go move on with your life. I'm telling you.
Anybody else want to comment?
Yeah, I do. I'd like to piggyback on what Dr. Barnes said. I'm from the generation, first of all, I was a PK kid. That means my father was a preacher. There was 8 of us, and everybody was going to college, and everybody was going to do something. And growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, where the hub of a lot of civil rights things were going on, you know, we were told that when school was integrated that we couldn't do math. That is a lie. You can do math, you can do science, you can do anything that you set your heart to do. You might need some help, but that's okay. Here at Morgan, especially in the nursing department, we have plenty of help for you if you decide to come into nursing. Like I said, we started this pre-nursing academy to help prepare you. So when you come into the nursing program, it's not like, boom, you know, what have I gotten myself into? We're preparing you to help ease that transition for you. So please, if you interested in nursing, any science, there's help for you here on this campus. And in this day of technology, some of you guys just hit a button and you got information there. But a lot of students don't take advantage of these opportunities. So please, everyone here on this panel, I'm speaking for everyone willing to help you.
Can I bounce off that, please? Yes. Just because you're not doing well in a particular class, in my opinion, is not a good enough reason to switch your whole major and career and everything. That's a good thing to find out. Wait a minute, I'm not doing good in this class, yet I know how to read and write and balance my checkbook and things like that. There's an issue here. So it's good to find the help that is necessary to make certain that you do good in the class. I say little class because right now it seems so big to you. But I promise you a few years from now that class is going to be next to nothing as you continue to read and study and develop yourself. So no, it's good to change majors because, you know, I am not interested in that. I'm not interested in this, but not because of the class. I had some folk there who were doing very, very well. Michelle Etienne is one of them. She was doing extremely well. She was considering medicine. She was right at the door, ready to go in there. So, well, you know, Dr. Barnes, I want to do this. And had all the grades and everything that was necessary. Dude, I was upset. I wanted her to move. But she was the one who made the decision. She had the grades, she had everything, but I want to study this. So that's, so forgive me for running my mouth there. Forgive me, because other folk get a chance to speak. That is the key right there. But if biology class gives you some trouble, chemistry or physics class, please don't let that the reason be why I'm not going to go into medicine because I'm having trouble in this class. You bring the whole team, whole organization, everything that you need, tutors, everything all around you, until you do well, do all the questions in the book, until you find a way to get through this course, and then you make a decision after that. That's my opinion there.
I can double down on that as well. Like I say, for nursing, it's basically knowing the sciences, the humanities, the Englishes. Just knowing, I was luckily where I had good mentors. I always kind of followed around positive people. I can't have negative people around me when I'm trying to pursue this nursing degree. I need that. So I was always able to get into good study groups. Everybody has their strength. You know, when I was an undergrad, I'm a Catholic, of course. One of my frat brothers, he's the one who got me through calculus. I was like, Lord, I don't want to. I said, Lord, I don't want to have to take this again, of course. And he's actually an orthopedic surgeon now. A lot of my frat brothers, they helped me get through, because some days I was struggling. Some days, you know, my study habits weren't there, or my attention span wasn't there, but you have to really persevere. This is what I want to. I got out of the service, I'm single, I got this 4 years to do this, my parents are supportive, they got my back, so there's no way I'm going to fail, you just have to persevere. And you're going to have some sleepless nights when you're in school. We've all done those all-nighters. Now they have computers, trying to get in there by 11:59 or whatever. But we didn't have that back in my days. You know, you hit the typewriter, and you know, because even when I was, and also like to avail yourself of the good resources at the school. Like at Coppin State, they had good study resource. I was in study halls or whatever. I was determined. I was, and same thing when I took the board. I'm taking this board one time. That's it. And so I passed it because of course I passed it. I was under pressure because I actually bought a car. So I said, I got to pass this thing. And so I passed it. And in those days, now it's computerized. The NCLEX is computerized. Back in those, it was 2 days at the convention center. 2 days. So I spent the night at the hotel right across the street to make sure I was there. but you just gotta want it. But it's and the rewards are there, but it's gonna be a lot of work to study those sciences, get good study habits, and you gotta make sure you take care of yourself. I know it's hard, you know, school can be all consuming, but you gotta take care of your health, you know. Take some time out to relax a little bit, but you gotta stay on top, because I had those professors that would smile on your face. I mean, it's on you. You gotta do the work, you know. You get what you put into it.
Just want to say something really quick, like, for those of you guys who are working and going to school, please do not get discouraged.
Please.
For me, when I decided to come to the United States, I came by myself. So just imagine being away from home and having to work like probably 40, 50, 60 hours to pay your rent and do everything. And then I was doing a bachelor's at the time. So I would work 40, 50 hours in the night and then come to school in the day. And then have to do it all over again. So I did that for my 4 years. And I'm still doing it actually until I finish my master's. So you will have those days, but just do not give up. Try to stay away from negative people. And you will have those times when you will pass some classes, you will fail some classes, you might have to retake it, but still try not to lose the faith. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I'll just say, you're always going to have people that discourage you. It's always going to be. I went to Maryland, and my counselor, I was a bio major. Honestly, I didn't really do well at Maryland. I did well enough to graduate, but you always have those people that discourage you. You just have to stay focused on what the goal is. You always want to network. I always would talk to people who are always ahead of me, that been through what I've been through, kind of like pick their brain, ask them questions like, hey, how did you get through this class? Why did you choose this? Why did you think like this? But just always stay focused, and everything should pay off. But
Are there any questions from any of you?
Sorry. So I'm interested in pharmacy actually, but I wanted to know, like, how did you choose the school that you wanted to go to?
Okay. So, I applied. I got into a few schools. Honestly, the reason why I chose Shenandoah because I went to the University of Maryland. It's a big school, thousands of students. So I kind of wanted to go to a small school to kind of see what that would be like. Maybe, I'll be able to study a little bit more. I knew going to pharmacy school was serious. I thought it would be like very, very hard. So I wanted to, just concentrate and go there. Huh? It's hard, but yeah, you can do it. So, that's a good question because when I went to pharmacy school my first year, I thought it was going to be terribly hard. I was so scared. Then I actually graduated top 20% of my class. I got an award, and it really isn't that hard until you realize how to study.
That's it.
Once you realize how to study, it's so fun. It's like a game. It's like once I unlocked that key, like I knew how professors would ask questions. I would go into the exam and be like, oh, this is easy. Like I know this is the answer. I know from this slide, from this. So you gotta kind of find your niche. Once you find that, and you can do anything. Anything.
Very good advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? No? Okay. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Don't leave if you don't have to, because some people may decide that they have some questions.
Sure.
They just haven't figured out what they want to ask yet. Do you want to give a number for nursing at the school, or they can just Google it and you get the number?
I want them to call me on my cell.
Huh?
It's easier to contact me on my cell.
Can you give that
Yes,
to people?
it's 443-570-3557.
Okay. And you all can network during lunch. I hope you all stay for lunch, okay? And so as we make the transition to the second panel, if you need a bio break real quick, or you want to pick some yogurt up or some, one of the breakfast bars or coffee or something, do that while we switch into the second panel. It's going to come up. All right? I'll let whoever wants to go first. The rules are 5 minutes, okay? Talk about your area of expertise, your passion in that area, why you went into that area, and courses that you took that may prepare you to go into that particular area. And then any other little tidbits you'd like to add on, okay? But we want them to be able to ask you questions and things like that, okay?
Dr. Walker?
Okay. So I'm Dr. Marika Walker. I actually just graduated with my PhD in 2017, so I'm fairly new graduate. So my background actually started in textile engineering. So my undergraduate, my master's degree is in textile engineering. You guys probably don't even know what biomechanics is either, so I'm gonna explain what all of the things are. So textile engineering is just basically design and research of technical textiles. So functional textiles like, for example, sports equipment and apparel, or firefighter clothing, or bulletproof vests, stuff like that. So textiles that serve a purpose. And in the health field, like operation gowns, so they're made to not have fluids go through to the doctor. So those types of textiles that are meant to serve a purpose is textile engineering. So I started off in that field. The way I got into that, I was a runner. So I ran track and cross country in high school, actually at Eleanor Roosevelt in Greenbelt, Maryland. And then I, what'd you say?
I said, I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry. I ran, we won nationals. So don't be sorry. And then I went on to run at North Carolina State University. So that's where I did my undergraduate, my master's degree. And I got into textile engineering from visiting the Nike headquarters on a running trip. And I basically saw how they were designing their equipment, and I always knew I was in the science and technology program, and I knew I wanted to get into something engineering related. Actually, that happened in high school, because when I was younger, I used to go to work with my dad, who was an engineer, and I was like, I'll never be an engineer. But that changed. So I knew I wanted to get into designing something. I was always creative, and I had a scientific background, like I did well in math and sciences. So I started off in textile engineering because I wanted to design sports apparel and equipment. And then I had an internship at Nike when I was finishing up my undergraduate degree, and I realized I wanted to work more with people. So I was in the lab designing textiles, but I wanted to work more with people, so I went into biomechanics instead. But before that, I started doing heat stress research for my master's degree. So technical textiles and how they affect heat stress was wildland firefighters. So that's what I went into next, and then I knew I wanted to go into biomechanics. So biomechanics is basically physics of the body, so how movement of the body affects injury, or in the opposite direction, performance. And my initial goal was always focusing on sports, but how sports apparel and equipment affects movement of the body. So that's kind of the long roundabout way of how I got into biomechanics. And as I've gone on, I've done some research in clinical biomechanics as well, so scoliosis research, and basically how the different diseases that affect movement are translated in research. So that's kind of how I got into the field. As far as the courses for biomechanics specifically, so as I mentioned, I was an engineer. I started off as an engineer, so I had the physics background, statics, solids, classes like that. Engineering classes like that kind of allow you to go into biomechanics, but it's not necessary. So in some areas, they have like biomechanics under kinesiology. So the background you would go through would be like biology or physical therapy type background. And then you can go into biomechanics through there. But by the time you get onto the research level, they would have you incorporate statics or, classes like that, physics, stuff like that.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm Dr. Vernon Butler. I kind of have my life sort of took like a little turn, so I'll give you the abbreviated version. I was actually, I wanted to go into nursing at first, but I found out that I really didn't like getting up in the morning. That's a secret, don't tell anybody, okay? I come alive at about 12 noon, so I'll probably be a different person around 12 noon. I'm joking, but that's a true story. So I ended up going to, I started out at Coppin State University, and I ended up transferring to University of Baltimore. And there I finished up my degree with health systems management. And through that program at the time, it was at the School of Public Affairs. And through that time, I actually had an internship with HERO. It was a health education resource organization, and you guys probably don't even know of it. But many years ago, it was an activist organization for people living with HIV and AIDS. So it kind of put me on that road of working with folks with HIV. And I did a lot of pretty much on the ground outreach. So back then they called it street outreach. And basically that kind of led me to work with populations, a lot of underserved populations and low income populations. So I was in the communities, writing grants with different nonprofit organizations and getting women, I kind of went over to breast cancer research and getting women tested. So I still stayed in the healthcare arena. Fast forward to that, I worked in different healthcare industries, whether they were private or nonprofit, did a little bit of public health work in that industry. And I went back to Coppin only to teach. During that time, I was able to teach for a health information management program over there, an accredited program in which I taught health research and statistics. So I was a specialty faculty. And from that time, working with a state institution, I was able to go back and get my doctorate degree. So I have a practitioner's doctorate. It's a doctorate degree, but it's a doctorate of management. So through that, through that role of working at Coppin State, I was a half faculty and a half practitioner, which meant that I had a lot of students. At the time when I started at Coppin, we had about probably 6 students. And by the time I finished, we had over 200 within that program. So I was able to grow the program by getting students placed in different healthcare organizations throughout Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So it grew a lot. So I felt like, my work is done here. So the program is still operating, but I then left and really wanted to focus on things that I really wanted to do. So I wanted to take that same model and put it towards global communities. And just recently, I've been to Barbados and Honduras with Dr. Terry. And basically, when I went to Honduras with Dr. Terry, that kind of opened up my mind a little bit more. And I said, you know what, I want to do the same type of work globally. You know, taking students or taking, millennials are my focus. That was my focus for my dissertation. But taking younger people and putting them in industries and having them just kind of branch out on their creative minds, the creative minds that you all have. So I felt like that was my strong suit, and I love working with students, and I love workforce development. Sort of, you're this person when you start out, when you start out with your bachelor's degree, or you start out in school, but you're someone different when you graduate, and as you get older, and as you get out there, you kind of get bumps and bruises, but you still have your creativity. So I sort of wanted to invest more in that, and that's pretty much what I do. That's the abbreviated version. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Cynthia Tucker, and I'm a registered and licensed dietitian. And in the beginning of starting college, I was not a nutrition major. In fact, I was a music major, and my concentration was piano. But what happened was that they took the music out of the public school systems. And so I said, well, what am I going to do now? So I decided to make a change. In fact, was dating a young man here at Morgan, some Morgan alum, and he said, well, it looks like you need to change your major. So I did change my major and decided to look into family and consumer sciences. And they had a nutrition component to that. And so I said, well, let me take a course, Introduction to Nutrition class. And I found that I could really relate to that because I had experience as a child in the 4-H. So a lot of what they were talking about, I had already been exposed to. So I saw that that was a good fit for me. So I decided to go on and major in nutritional sciences. And at that time, it was in the School of Education and Urban Studies. And I was there for a while. And then what happened was that nutrition was moved to School of Community Health and Policy. And at that time, there was only 2 of us that were in that program. And we had a very small cohort of students. But let me go back and tell you a little bit more about my background too, because after I finished at Morgan with my degree in nutritional sciences, I went on and volunteered at Mercy Hospital here in Baltimore City as a dietetic technician. And then I decided that I needed to go back to school, and I got an MBA. And because I've always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. So I got the MBA, and after that, I decided I got a job at Johns Hopkins, and I was a manager for the staff and the visitors cafeteria at Johns Hopkins. And I did that for a year, and then I had an opportunity to start a business. And I did food service contract, landed a food service contract at Baltimore City Community College and Coppin State. And that was my first entrepreneurial experience. And I did contract feeding there. And I also did contract feeding for daycare centers, senior citizen contract feeding. And I had the business here in Baltimore and in Philadelphia. So I was producing about 2,500 meals a day. And going back and forth from Philadelphia to Baltimore, back and forth. And I did that for 10 years. So after that, I burned out. And so I took a year off to decide what I was going to do. And I decided to go back to school, and I went to Howard University and got my PhD there in nutritional sciences. And I did a postdoc at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. And I was doing research in cancer, breast cancer. And after that, I got a phone call for one of my buddies that we studied for the registration exam for dietetics. And she said that she had a position open, and I applied, and I'm here at Morgan. So I've been here for 16 years. But I wanted to say too that nutrition is a very, very important major, because we all have to eat. And the thing is that we're noticing that there are so many chronic diseases in people of color, particularly African Americans. And that was something that was very dear to me. What can we do to try to get our people to eat right? And that was one of my reasons for making that change to nutrition. And so I see that we have a a lot of work to be done. And with my students, I like to give more experiential type learning to get them into the field, to do presentations and whatnot to the communities and teach our people better ways of getting nutrition in their diets and eating properly. Because we know that if you eat properly and you exercise, that can eliminate a lot of the chronic diseases that our people are experiencing. And nutrition, it has 3 cores. It has a clinical core, it has a community core, and it has a food service management core. And through my work, I have been in all 3 of the cores. So here at Morgan, I've been able to teach in all 3 of the cores to help our students. And that's my background.
Thank you.
My name is Alexander Rufus. I am an environmental scientist. With the exception of my first degree, all my degrees are environmental science. So I am a dyed-in-the-wool environmental science nerd. I'm a laboratory and field scientist, and so that's the short of it in terms of background. Why environmental science? Why environmental science? Well, one of the things, I'm happy to be an environmental scientist in that environmental scientists, the bulk of their research is to solve problems, very serious problems that have profound impacts on the environment, the larger environment that we live in, we and the other animals in the animal kingdom. And this is a very important point. The #1 driver for extinction of animalia and plantae in the environment is habitat destruction. Well, we are part and parcel of the animal kingdom. And very soon, if we do not wake up and take hold of where we're going, habitat destruction is going to be responsible for the extinction of humanity. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. So we solve problems, we research. We may not come to find any answers, but there is some satisfaction in that we are trying to address problems, many problems. How did I get here? I used to say it as a joke, but it's not so much of a joke. I'm a product of inner city ghetto schools. In that, I noticed certain things that is positive in my career trajectory, but didn't help me out necessarily when I got to college. I got to college on scholarships. I was a knucklehead football player, and I got there and playing ball and so forth, and that was my focus. However, I was lucky to go to Howard University at a very important time in its history. And so meeting people, Africans from West Indies, from continental Africa, people from Iran and so forth, I quickly realized how unimportant sports is. And it got boring to me. There are a lot of very important things that are happening in the world that are impacting people that need to be addressed more than learning where I'm supposed to be at a given play on a given down. So, long and short of it, I started taking my studies very seriously because I wanted to kind of be involved in leaving a better place for humanity. There's a lot of discussion there, but again, we want to keep this short and sweet. Now, why environmental science? And why is environmental science important to health, public health? What is a laboratory field scientist doing in the School of Public Health? Because prior to coming to Morgan, I've been here, just finished 2 years. I was always associated with the schools of science, and most of my students were science students and engineering students. But it's very important that we connect the two. Environmental contamination and health, because a lot of the drivers that negatively impact health are pollutants that we are producing. And you know, in my matriculation through school, I've acquired some understanding how certain contaminants directly and indirectly impact public health, and so making that connection and teaching public health students is vital and has been very rewarding for me. In going beyond just teaching fellow science nerds, teaching and addressing and talking to policy people has been instructive. It's been a learning experience for me in that how do you critique public policy through science evidence-based research, and then come to the realization that the policy adopted not only doesn't work, it can't work because it doesn't make scientific sense. So there doesn't work, and then working with students who are not necessarily scientists or want to go in that trajectory, but how to develop more effective policy, again, based on scientific evidence. So it's really been a rewarding experience in interacting with a lot of my students and doing that, because it's really new to me. And I'll give you an example, perfect example, of how contamination impacts public health. One of my areas of focus, research focus, is lead contamination in urban soils. And lead contaminated soils disproportionately impacts African children living in urban environments. And it's an international problem. It's uniquely an urban issue in Moscow, Beijing, Lagos, Nigeria, Johannesburg, Washington, D.C., and so forth, for a lot of reasons. But socioeconomic circumstances and the history of redlining, racist redlining policy, has positioned African families to live in areas where pollution brown zones exist disproportionately. And so that is a major motivator for me. I'll give you just a very short explanation. I have setting up a incubation study located downstairs in the storage room, and tomorrow I'll be starting this 3-week incubation where I collected soil from inner city Baltimore with a lead contamination level of over 2,200 ppm. Natural ambient background levels are between 35 and 70. Okay. This was in a neighborhood, kids playing in the yard, wrestling and so forth. So, the treatments are cheap, inexpensive ways to deal with these issues to reduce exposure, basically. So that's the thrust of one half of my research. Now, we can, the question and answer, we can talk about career paths in environmental health. It's more than just the science. Management, administration, planning. There are a lot of different areas. Policy analysis, environmental law is a very important area for people who are not necessarily of good means or come from the ethnic groups that are positively targeted in this country. So that's kind of the short of it. But I'm very eager to engage you in questions and answers, because I have a recommendation about one thing to do very well in college that I've observed. Because a lot of my teaching experience has been in predominantly European institutions in America. And I noticed some behavior that has condemned African.
All these goals pretty much relate to one another. How do you create a system of leadership where you have seamless communication between primary, secondary, tertiary, in order to guide the health system to benefit everyone? So the inadequacies when it comes to the second goal there's three primary ones. The first one is health planning. So the way it works is that, so right now what you're seeing, these 6 goals are from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So that's the overarching, and pretty much the entire country it oversees. But then underneath that, you have the regional health authorities. So for example, when I went to Jamaica to work with Claremont and Bamboo Clinic, I had to get the okay from the regional health authority. The regional health authority gets my forms, gets all my stuff. They send it out to the Ministry of Health, and then they pretty much either accept or deny it. I mean, they accept it, but they're the ones that do it. So there are many levels of communication that have to go on for all this to happen. And as I said before, there's a huge lack of communication there in health planning. So I mean, because of that lack of communication and whatnot, the ability to develop evidence-based policies and monitor outcomes, that's a huge inadequacy right now. So the quality of the data and the production and utilization of analytical reports, that's pretty much non-existent. I mean, you have thousands and thousands of sheets of paper. I mean, right now we have Excel. We just type it in and put a formula in and it just gives us analytics. They don't really have that over there. So that's why a huge thing for us is taking laptops, pretty much giving them the abilities to use these analytics for what they do have. And pretty much the major health clinics, I mean, they do have the computers and the internet, and they do have the ability to do this. But the places where you go to set up mobile clinics, they don't, obviously it's a mobile clinic, they don't have any of that. But the idea is, I'll get to it later. So yeah, the third one is the challenge in poor reporting requirements and non-compliance with reporting of what happens. So I mean, it's pretty much people go in. I mean, it's really funny because a lack of reporting, I mean, that'd be like a felony, it'd be a crime to do it here, to not report and give back the information. But over there, it's pretty much do whatever you please. I mean, pretty much they have all these records, they don't really do anything with them in order to create the policies. So there's no way to really analyze communities, there's no way to analyze disparities here or there. I mean, they have data, but the data is a very limited subsection of the entire population that they're reporting on. So that's that. And I'm going to go over this in July way more in depth, because I'm kind of speeding it out. I don't want to keep you guys here. So that's the second. So then the third one is there's a huge resource gap. So as I said before, universal health care, big deal. That's what they're trying to do. So public expenditure in health in Jamaica right now represents 3.47% of GDP. In order for universal health care to actually be a valid thing, it needs to go up to 6% of GDP in order to serve everyone. So they still have a while to go in order to get there. So right now, if the government maintains this level of growth in investment into the health systems, in 80 years it'll take to get to 6% of GDP. So I mean, that's this is a 2030 goal, but realistically, I mean, from what at their pace right now, it's going to take a century. So different outputs and outcomes of this goal and the problems that occur. So when it comes to financing, so the average length of stay, as I said before, a lot of the first time a lot of these people would go and get health care is in hospitals, the second level of care. Because of this, the amount of time people are in hospital beds or in the hospital system is a lot. And because due to that, the amount of time, the average length of stay for these people is extraordinary and just wastes a lot of the country's money. So they could get to the 6% in a shorter period of time if they had better communication. it's not that